Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, in this video, I'm going to try to analyze Chad Daybell. Okay, I find this to be a very challenging. This really challenged me to almost to my limits. In fact, I'm not even 100% confident, but I'm going to try and give my best, really with full effort, to try to understand Chad Daybell. I find it very difficult to really get through him because he's sort of hard to. He's sort of hard to penetrate. Okay, but I'll do my best. And to set this up, I had to do another video just to set up the kind of the vocabulary and the ideas that I'm going to be using because I really think you need a special approach. At least I need a special approach to even begin to understand Chad Daybell. So, hate to ask, but if you want, you don't have to. But if you could just watch the last video that I posted, that kind of sets up as best I can, the vocabulary and the concepts that at least I need to try to understand Chad Daybell. Okay, so where do I start with Chad Daybell? And again, this is a hard one. Okay, but the first thing for me is the Mormon upbringing. Okay, I think that's very important. I'm not going to get too much into his own family. I know there was talk about how he didn't get along very well with his mother and all that, but I'm going to kind of leave that on the side for now. I'm just going to focus generally on the Mormon upbringing. Okay. I think it's very important before we get into his personal psychology to understand that Mormonism really is a utopian ethnicity. Okay, I really think Mormonism is a defined, distinct American ethnicity. I think it's a true ethnicity within the United States. Um, and I think it is kind of like a very special kind of a ethnicity within. I'm going to say sort of the pioneer. It's kind of pioneer Americans, and also maybe having roots in sort of the farm, sort of rural kind of. I'm going to say I don't even know if they had social classes in the 18th century or 19th century, but I would say kind of the late 18th century kind of not kind of humble farmer type people from Western New York, let's say, or that area more or less. But it is kind of it comes out of a rural farming kind of a culture, and it ended up sort of becoming sort of pioneer culture. Okay, so there's a lot of pride in that. Obviously, these people dealt with a lot of adversity, migrating all the way to Utah and facing trouble all along the way. And then Utah itself, in the 19th century, must have been a really hostile place to try to live. So, these people really did earn, a legitimate identity as a true ethnicity in the United States. And I mean, that has to be, you have to honor that. And there's no need to overlook that. So definitely, I see Chad as coming from the pioneer Mormon pioneer stock, and that in the Mormon in the Mormon ethnicity, people with genetic pioneer ancestry are really considered kind of like a little more elite. Okay, so he already has that advantage, I guess, genetically or ethnically. He's ethnically a super Mormon. Okay, I mean, maybe I can't say he's a necessarily like an ancestor of he's not like his ancestor maybe wasn't Joseph Smith, or he's not like a descendant of Brigham Young, maybe I don't know, but he's definitely right there with the pioneer stock of the Mormon ethnicity, so that's super important. um, the other thing is that not only is the Mormon identity, not only is it an ethnicity in the United States, but I do think the Mormon culture is a very hyper utopian culture. It's very utopian. Um, the kind of like the ideal personalities in the Mormon Church are people who are just endlessly cheerful, really positive, very very wholesome, sort of like untainted, not an ounce of pepper. It's just all sugar. It's kind of that's a very challenging standard. Okay, because I mean, it is their currency, and that is the standard in the Mormon ethnicity. However, that can present problems for people who might have what I would consider to be personality disorders. Okay, so the way I described it earlier in the world of magic, the world of influence, um, a person with a personality disorder is going to have a limited executive capacity when activated. Okay, so we have to look at Chad as a person who's in a situation of activation. Okay, and the reason I say that is because I think, for people who grow up in the Mormon ethnicity, okay, the power and the charm and the the influence of the Mormon paradigms, like these kind of almost like Stepford perfect, sort of like perfect positive people, that is very powerful. Okay. And it's powerful even for people who are not Mormon. I mean, it's like, wow, these people are so positive. They're so cheerful. It's kind of like, and they're so honest about it. It's like so real, it's like, wow, it's a little bit creepy maybe because it seems kind of fake, but it is so earnest, And I think that's very powerful. And I think some people really are captivated by that and they even want to become that. But the problem is that, how can I say this? If you have a personality disorder, the problem is that we're not just one thing. Okay, you may think you're one thing, but you're really many many things. And no matter how perfect Mormon you are, you're going to have other parts of you, more aggressive, more confrontational, more negative, more combative, more divorcing, more kind of like disavowing, alienating. We have all these different personality modes that I talked about in the last video. Okay. And so I think a person like Chad probably identified with the Mormon golden boy, the Mormon positive, whatever. But what's he going to do with these other parts of himself, And to give Chad credit, in his fiction works, okay, he does express, I think, a lot of negativity that is from within in his picture of the apocalyptic world, okay? Because in his vision of the apocalyptic world, he really does describe people being destroyed, a lot of violence, a lot of terrible, disgusting things, and in his life he was even kind of willing to be, let's say, a grave digger. You know what I mean? So he is, maybe without identifying directly, he's getting involved in and expressing other parts of himself that are not just the Mormon golden boy. Okay, so that's important, and you have to give him credit for that. But I think he did sort of only identify personally as, with the Mormon ideal. And so these other parts of him are not really, he doesn't really see how they're integrated into him. They're sort of projected out, But the bottom line is that, what I can see in Chad, besides the Mormon golden man, golden boy, whatever, I do see that he has very, very strong alienation, divorcing, disregarding, kind of, sort of like, kind of, he's very dismissive of things that are not part of the Mormon, his Mormon orthodoxy. Okay, so he has a certain way of, kind of understanding the better people are the people with the more positive spirits or the more light spirits and not dark spirits or whatever. However, he does this, and so when he finds people to be sort of on the wrong side, they become very inhuman. They become very like meaningless to him. They're like trash. You know what I mean? And so this is a very common modality that shows up, I think, in personality disorders, where you can have a strong divorce mechanism. You can have a strong alienation mechanism. Okay. So, like, say, if I see a video from India and I see these dirty people, bathing in the Ganges River, it's like it's like watching animals, or maybe even animals would be more. I could identify more with the animals. And so, like, I'm not saying I personally feel that way, but I'm just saying that's a way that people could show up, or those dirty homeless people that they become so alienated that, yeah, they're human, but you sort of see them in the distance. It's kind of like a lens that puts things way in the distance. And I think Chad, his attitude towards things that are not, like under like his attitude towards things that don't meet the standard of his Mormon orthodoxy, those things to him are like basically just trash. So I'm sure Chad's the kind of person where if you're not even Mormon, you're just really far away. You're just really alien. So he has that strong alienation modality and that natural effect of really minimizing the reality and the dignity of things that don't fall under his orthodoxy. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that has to be a problem. Okay. I could have those too. Okay. It's how you play with those things that makes the difference. That's where we get into the regulation, the dysregulation of the regulation. What makes a person have a personality disorder is not those modalities, but it's how they get integrated into our interactions with people and modulated. Okay. So all those things that Chad has, it's the difference between play fighting and real fighting. Okay. If he could find a way to have all those characteristics and still integrate and deal with people and sort of learn to bring the intensity down to just play fighting, that could just be a healthy personality. Okay. But in his case, he hasn't come to a regulation. So when he encounters something that really is like, say, an obstacle to him or like an enemy or like not under his orthodoxy or like a dark spirit, that person really becomes like nothing to him, like has it's like to the extreme. Okay. So I think that the other thing I see in Chad is that unfortunately he has very strong what I would call magical powers, and I mean powers of hypnotic influence. He's able to take his attitudes and sort of influence his attitudes into other people so that they are infected by, and they have the contagion of his attitudes. Okay, so he's able to really project and impart his way of thinking into other people. Okay, so that to me is just a natural, charismatic, influential. That's just influential charisma. Okay, and a lot of people have it. A lot of lawyers have that. A lot of politicians, pastors, but he has that, and he really has it strong. So now that assumes that you take him. If somebody doesn't take him seriously, he's not going to have any effect. But for those who do take him seriously, he has a very strong way of transmitting and sharing his attitudes and transmitting them into other people. So he is magically, I think, a powerful person. Now he's not attractive. He looks like a country oaf. I mean, even among Mormons, he looks like, really kind of a rural sort of almost he looks like a farmer from 1938 or 45 or whatever. He's not a very remarkable person, but he does have that charismatic projection. He's able to have, has charismatic transmission of his attitudes towards others. So for those who fall under his spell, he can really infect them with those attitudes. So basically, I'm going to go ahead and classify him as narcissistic for sure, because I think that just that minimization of others that don't meet his standard, I mean, that's very classic to me, that's very classic narcissistic. I think he has a little trace of psychopathy because I think under certain conditions, he can really disregard the humanity and the dignity of others. Okay. So I would give that just a little bit of psychopathy. I think mostly narcissism. And he has to be activated for the psychopathy to really express. In other words, the psychopathy doesn't just come out to anybody. It's really under certain activation. Okay. So basically, people came in his way along the way. Certain people were not sort of part of the team, or he didn't perceive them as being, having an affinity for his orthodoxy, and those people really got minimized. And he was able to project his attitudes into other people, and in such a powerful way that people really, really felt the way he did, and he was able to almost, he was able to infect people with his kind of psychopathic, sort of dehumanization and de-dignification of people that didn't meet his standards. So I'd say NPD with ASPD characteristics, more or less. So yeah, that's Chad Daybell.